All right, my friends, welcome back to the Renowned Leadership Podcast. I'm your amazing host, Stephen Morris, and I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited that you're here. More importantly, I'm so excited to bring you guys today's guest, David Kitchens. He's a former NCAA Division I strength and conditioning coach. He's worked with some of the top teams in the NCAA. Now he is a speaker, entrepreneur, and thought leader in the leadership world. And he has some amazing insights, some great wisdom. I am so excited to bring him to you guys. So without further ado, here we go. All right, my man, David, look. So first of all, congratulations, man. Working with some of the collegiate football teams that you worked with, I'm crazy jelly, man. How did you even get into that industry, the personal trainer, or did you do the overall training plan?
I did. So I was both. So we wrote the overall plans, but I was also on the floor every day with the athletes. So it's kind of a crazy story how I got into it, man, to be honest with you. So I graduated with a business degree from college. So I didn't have an exercise science degree, no background other than I was just a meathead myself, and I love football and I love the weight room, that kind of deal. But I graduated with a business degree, and I was actually selling IT systems. So I was selling like cloud solutions to small businesses in Pennsylvania. And I was making money, but I was wearing a shirt and tie every day, and I hated it. Like, I was so miserable. So I got a phone call from a former coach of mine who had become a head coach at a local high school, and he's like, "Hey man, could you come run the weight room for us?" And I'm like, I'm sure, dude. I don't really know much, but I've been writing programs and doing my own thing. So I went and started coaching in the weight room, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. And so ended up staying on for a season and coaching with him, coach the offensive and defensive line as well as the weight room. And from there, I was like, can you do this as a career? Is this a real thing? And he's like, yeah, man, like a strength and conditioning coach, you can do that. And I'm like, I want to do that. But I didn't know anybody in the industry because I didn't know anything about it. And so I literally sat down, dude. I looked up every Division I school on the East Coast, and I wrote them all letters and said I would quit my job and come work for them for free if they would let me come and learn. And so I got an opportunity at Robert Morris University out in Pittsburgh. Todd Hammer, my guy, gave me a shot, and I literally walked in. I told my boss, I was like, dude, listen, I quit. And he's like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to be a strength coach. And he's like, what's that? And I'm like, I'm not quite sure yet, but I know I work in the weight room, and I know I'm going to love it. So I literally packed all my stuff in a Jeep, dude. I moved to Pittsburgh. I lived in this sketchy area of Pittsburgh. When I paid my rent, it had to be all cash. It was an old high school that they converted into 1-bedroom apartments. So I paid for the whole summer in advance. Again, had no exercise science degree, no certification, no nothing. I was literally cleaning the protein machine, helping run the warm-ups, learning the techniques, learning everything. And I did that for 5 or 6 months. And then I ran out of money, and I came home to work a football camp at a local college, and I met their strength and conditioning coach, and he offered me an internship to come, so I could move closer to home. So I came in and did that. And then, one thing led to another. Next thing I know, 2 years later, I'm in a Division I locker room. It was nuts, man. It was a crazy turn of events. And people still look at me and they're like, you did what? And I'm like, yeah, dude, I quit my job, loaded everything in the Jeep, and headed to Pittsburgh.
Dude, oh man, I don't even know where to begin with this story. So first of all, like I said at the beginning, congratulations, man, because I would love that job, but I just don't have the balls to just quit everything. Here, so this actually is something I'm big on right now, and that is so I'm sure you've heard the term the great lie, right? Each generation has a great lie, and it's usually from a politician or dictator, something. I think our generation's great lie is success, right? Because we are taught that success is this thing that we chase. And it's either being the Kardashians, which I don't hate on the Kardashians, man. They are brilliant business people.
killing
I
it.
mean, bro, they have literally monetized every aspect of their life. Like, brilliant, genius. You go Kardashians. But that's not, to me, that's not what success is. Success is loving what you do. Right. And I feel like we're sold this thing that, we see the BMXer, and this is my favorite analogy to use for this is we see that BMXer do his crazy 520 360 backflip, quadruple, whatever, and he sticks it and lands it. And you're just like, how in the hell does this dude do that? And we're just blown away. But what we don't see are the 5 years of him landing on his face and the broken bones and the bleeding that goes into this trick, the being able to do this thing. And so your story inspires the heck out of me because I quit my job. I had nothing, right? You literally you everything you owned, you could fit in a car. You lived in a crappy rundown apartment. Also, you could just get this thing that's for you success, this thing that you love to do. I mean, that's just inspiring, bro. Like, I don't,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
it was wild. Like I look back on it now and I'm like, man, I can't believe I did that. But it was this thing that in the moment I was like, no, this is just what I want to do. And so like when I got out there, man, it was literally like you're in the office at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and you're making the protein shakes, you're running groups, you're coaching all day, you're leaving at like 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night. I'd go home, I'd study for this exam. You have to pass a certification exam to be a strength and conditioning coach, to be a paid strength and conditioning coach at the college level. So like I was doing all this and there was still no guarantee that I could even make a career out of it because I still had to pass the exam. So like I could have done all this and then failed the exam and it never would have even mattered. Right. So it's like when you start climbing the mountain, you just get it was literally the definition of just getting obsessed with the process. Like I was so enthralled and so so dialed in on what I was doing on a day to day. And I loved it so much that I was like, I didn't even think about the possible negative outcomes. It was just like, no, I just need to keep doing this and eventually it'll lead to the right things. And so it did, man. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have a great career. And, like you said, people see it on the outside and they're like, oh, dude, you were on ESPN. Like there's pictures of you when you coached against Ohio State. Like you coached it against USC on opening weekend. Like you did all these cool things. You were the youngest head strength coach in the country, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, but what you didn't see is for 8 years, I got up at 3:45 in the morning. What you didn't see is for 8 years, I was working for, all these different universities. I'm flying around the country. I'm away from my family. I'm away from all these things. So like there's always that dark side to it. But again, when you're in the process and you truly love what you do, like I loved every moment of that journey. And I love every moment of what I'm doing now. And so it's like when you're in love with it, you don't even think about the hours and the day. You know what I mean? Like there was times where like family would call me and they like talk to me and I'm like, I don't even know what day it is. Like I'm just locked in on what like I know to me it's USC week. Like that's all I know. I don't know what day it is. I don't know. You know what I mean? None of that stuff matters. All that matters is waking up every day and doing the best that I possibly can so that I can prepare these young men for whatever we got to go through on Saturday.
Right. Absolutely. And the best, I think the key phrase, the key lesson in what you just said is 8 years. 8 years. It wasn't that BMX trick that we saw just on ESPN just sticks it. No, it was 8 freaking years. That's a long time to
Absolutely.
chase a passion and not see success. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to make an assumption towards you and tell me if I'm right or wrong here. And that is the fuel for that 8 years was counting every single small win you could to propel you to the next win and to the next small win. And it just finally stacked up to where you are coaching against Ohio State.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was like at first it was survival. Like I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it and be like, oh, it was, I knew I was gonna be here one day. I had no idea. All I knew is that I wanted to try and be the best at what I did. and I knew that the best were at the high Division I level. So I knew that I had to try and chase that. And so from there, it was just breaking it into exactly what you said, like smaller things along the way. So it's like, okay, can I land an internship at a top rated Division II school? All right, got it. Okay, there's an opening here to become the head strength coach at this Division II school. How do I get it? Okay, here's what I need to do. All right, now, I finally got an opportunity at Division I at UNLV. I get offered the job on a Wednesday. I say, when do you need me? I'm in Pennsylvania. They're like, we need you Friday. And I'm like, well, it's a 2-day drive, so I don't know how that's gonna happen. Like, and they're like, no, no, no. We'll connect you with our travel agent. Your flights are being booked as we speak. Don't worry about your stuff. Just bring a book bag. We'll take care of the rest. And I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking in my head, I'm going through the order of operations. Like, do I call my mom first? Do I call my boss first? Like, who do I even call first to tell them that, like, hey, I'm leaving tomorrow to move across the country? But that was another small win for me, right? And so that was exactly what it was. It was focusing on, like, okay, what can I do in the next 24 hours that's going to get me closer to the vision that I have in my head? What can I do? Who can I reach out to? What questions can I ask? Who can I get around? All those types of things that are going to lead me to those small things. Because if I would have just focused on that, like, I've seen dudes that do that and they burn out and they run into walls and they don't know how to overcome adversity because they're so focused on down the road, and so, for instance, like when I became the youngest strength coach in the country, I didn't know. Somebody reached out to me and sent me a link to the data and asked me if they could interview me about it. And I didn't even know what was going on. I already had the job for like a month and a half. I had no idea that I was the youngest in the country. All I knew was that I got this next step and I had these things that I needed to do. Right. So yeah, when you're in it, man, it's focusing on the 6 inches in front of your face and just handling that.
Uh, Absolutely, man. That's so powerful. And so, what gave you the courage to do this? To just screw it. I'm going for what I want. What gave you that courage? Because I feel like in today's society, that's what really holds people back is they're so scared of failing.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I asked myself the same question. It's kind of this thing that I was born with, and I hate to say that because I'm such a person that believes, like, the motto of our company is built not born. So I don't really believe that people are born with certain things, but I was just born with this ability to bet on myself blindly at times, and it's burned me. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's been times where I've taken a big swing and I've swung for the fences and went back to the dugout looking like an idiot. But when it's really mattered, like when the chips are down, I truly, truly believe in betting on yourself. And in that specific situation, the ability to quit my job and walk into the unknown like that, it was the fact that I knew, like, I remember being at a holiday Christmas party for the IT company that I work for, and I looked around and I saw these guys in their 40s and mid 40s, late 40s, whatever, and I saw them. They were all wearing Rolexes and they're doing well, and they're drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes and cigars, and I'm just like, dude, that is not who I want to be. Like, that's not the future that I see for myself. That's not success to me. And so I knew that whatever was coming from this coaching passion of mine was going to be better than that. And the same thing now with my business. Like, I walked away from that Division I job to start a business because I knew that whatever I was going to do is going to be better than the current reality, right? And not that reality was bad. It wasn't. It was a phenomenal experience, but it was something that I wanted. And so I think that's what it comes down to, man. Is just the undying belief in yourself that, like, if I'm gonna mess up, at least it's by my own hand.
I love that. Absolutely. And for me, it is, my mantra, or one of, I have a lot of mantras, but one of my mantras has always been, I don't want to look back. I don't want to be 80 years old on my deathbed looking at my life thinking, I wish I'd have done that. I wish I would have tried.
Right.
Because to me, that like you, I have done many of things and I have failed at way more things than I've succeeded at, unfortunately. But it's at least I tried. Can is my business going to be a smashing success like I think it is? Is my podcast going to be awesome like I think it is? I don't know. I got to try and find out. But I would rather try it and fail and lose everything. than gain everything and be on my deathbed with a ton of regret knowing that I didn't meet my potential.
Dude, it's life in the arena. Like I'm a firm believer, and I say this to everybody that I come in contact with that will listen. It's my unsolicited TED talk. Like live life in the arena. Stop being in the stands. Because the longer you're in the stands, the harder it is to get in the arena. The
Mm,
harder it is to pick yourself up and say, I'm gonna go for it. Like just dive in and figure it out later. The first 2 years of running my business, man, I was flying the plane and building it at the same time. I had no idea what I was doing. I tell people I graduated from YouTube University. Like I had no clue. But I'm in the arena. I'm down here, man. I got calluses on my hand. I got, you know what I mean? I'm tasting my own blood. Like I'm going through it. And to me, that's a life worth living.
absolutely, man. That plays right into my main mantra, which is action breeds clarity, right? Like
Always.
friggin' just like you, when I'm like, you know what, I'm starting my business. I'm starting this leadership. I know tons about leadership. I've been at the pinnacle of leadership. I know how to build these high performing, high powered teams. Like I'm going to build a company that can teach people how to do what I know, right? And my wife was like, "That's great. How are you going to do it?" I have no clue, but I'm going to figure it out. And so, literally, after that decision was made, within 2 days, I had a website. And within 24 hours of having a website, I got an email from Google informing me of copyright laws, which I had no clue.
Dude, I get, man. I get it though. When I started mine the first day. So I got offered a contract extension from my coaching job that I was at the time. And something in my gut was just like, no, it's time to do something different. It's time to climb a new mountain. You've done this, whatever. I was 28 at the time, I think. I was like, all right, I've climbed this mountain. What's next? Right. And so for me, it was the leadership mountain. And so I turned down the contract, and that night I'm at my house Googling like how do you start an LLC? Like I didn't even know I first I Googled what does LLC stand for because I didn't know. All I knew is that people that I talked to were telling me you need an LLC. And I'm like, okay, let me Google what is an LLC? How do I start it? And like what do I need to do this? Like how do I go about this? So I get it, man. But like you said, action breeds clarity, right? Like each step uncovers a little bit more. It's like that old computer game. I forget what it was, but like you started with a little map dot and everything else was black. And then as you explored more, it showed more and more of the map. Right. That's how business is. That's how leadership is. That's how pretty much any endeavor in life is. You just got to have the courage to get out into that unknown at first and then let it uncover itself as you go. You're gonna find something. You might not end up where you thought you were gonna end up. Like if you told me 3 years ago when I started this business that this is what it would look like 3 years into it, I would have laughed in your face. I would have been like, no way. It's me in a bedroom right now. I'm not going to have a team of 3 people. We're not going to work with companies across the country. I'm not going to have the opportunity to speak at the University of Miami to their football staff. I'm not going to do those things. It's going to take time, right? But as I took more massive action, I started to get massive opportunities. And it was like, oh, okay, I'm not just chasing this thing anymore. I'm kind of being this thing. Now I just need to keep going.
Absolutely. And to add on to what you said, the more action you take, the more steps forward you take, the less fear you have. And so the whole action breeds clarity mantra comes from when I learned how to jump out of airplanes in the Army, because I am deathly scared of heights, bro. But the problem is, if the Army tells you to do something, you got to go do it. And so, ultimately what happened is I got pushed out of the airplane the first time accidentally, and I was freaking out, panicking, and finally I'm like, dude, you got to get a hold of yourself, or you're gonna die. Like, stop, just focus for a few minutes so you can survive. Then you can freak out all you want, but just survive this. And I realized that once I did that, all of a sudden fear was gone. I no longer had time to be scared because I had to focus on what I had to do. And so I've literally lived every second of my life that way, because I know, as long if I fear it, I just have to take a step into it. And once I get into it, once I got into this business, because trust me, starting your own business is freaking scary. It's a lot of money. I went into debt to do this, a lot of debt, bro. Like, it was scary as hell. But you know what? the more steps I take, the less fear I have, because the more clarity I gain. The more clarity you have, the more you realize there's nothing to be scared of.
Right. There's that quote, I forget who said it, but it's everything you want is on the other side of fear. Like everything you want. And I remind myself that. I mean, dude, I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't get nervous at times when I'm standing in front of rooms, or when I'm eating lunch with people that have bank accounts that could swallow mine, and I'm, for lack of a better term, like I'm bullshitting my way through this at first. Like I'm telling people, like, yeah, like I'll talk to my team. I don't have a team. It was me. Like who am I going to talk to? Like I'm going to talk to myself, but they don't need to know that, right? So I'm faking it as I'm going at the beginning, but the more I did it, the more confident I was, and it comes down to, again, I'm a big quote guy. I love stories and quotes and things like that. I think they are great, illustrations for life. There was somebody that said life comes down to a few choices you make with shaky hands. Like the things
Right.
that you're willing to do when you are petrified and you are terrified. That's what it comes down to. Like we signed a contract last year with a large company that had 800 employees across 40 states, and it was 6 tour dates in 6 cities in 6 weeks. And we had never done anything like that in my company. Never. I mean, not even anything in that atmosphere. And I was scared to death. I'm like, dude, we could really screw this up. Like, this is the biggest contract we've ever had. We have no business even being in this room, let alone on these stages, let alone be the only person that has this contract. And we went and we did it and we crushed it. And it was like every week that we were on the road, we got more confident. Things got worked out. Little bugs got worked out in the system. The way we traveled got more efficient. Like all these things started to clear up. And it's like all of a sudden we get to week 6 and I'm kind of like, all right, man, I'm pretty warm now. Like I'm ready to really rock this thing. And so yeah, man, it comes down to like exactly what you said. If you fear it, there's a high likelihood that you should probably run face first into that thing.
Absolutely. I love that. I'm going to quote that 100%. Face first, go. So you already said it once, and this is a big. I hate this term, and I'm mad at myself that I'm going to use it. It's a trigger for me. I hate it when people say, "Oh, that person is just a naturally born leader." Like you already said that no one is born a specific way. Like leadership is a skill.
Yes.
Now you might be born with characteristics, like you might be like you seem like a charismatic person, which helps you in leadership,
Right.
but there's so much more to leadership. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I look at leadership, the way my mind works is like frameworks and systems. I like to break things down into pieces and into their kind of components, right? Like that's just the way my mind works. And so when I look at leadership, first off, I look at it as exactly what you said, a skill that you can learn. Because I look at my own life and my own example of that, of being in the situations that I was in and the ability to lead teams and lead cultures and things. Like I wasn't born with anything special. I'm a black guy from rural Pennsylvania that was born into a single parent household. Never should have a master's degree, never should be a PhD candidate, shouldn't have done the things I've done. So if I can figure this stuff out, anybody can. So it's just figuring out how do we teach it, right? And so when I look at it from a psychology standpoint, I say, okay, what are the top traits of the highest performing leaders? And if you look at it from a psychology standpoint, it's character, it's commitment, it's consistency, it's creativity, and it's the ability to communicate. They all happen to start with C, so we call them the 5 C's of leadership. That's what psychology shows as the top traits of leaders. So when I look at how do I build a curriculum to teach people that, I say, okay, what are the things you need to have high character? Well, you need self-awareness, you need empathy, you need all these different things that go into character. Okay, that works. All right, so now let me break down consistency. Well, you can't be consistent in anything if you don't know who you are. So you still have to go back to character for that. And then you just build off of it from there. And so when I'm teaching this to people, I start at the beginning and I say, lead yourself first. And then we'll start building all these skills around it. And before you know it, by working on yourself, you can become a better leader. Now, obviously, there's communication skills and things that have to go along with that. But it all starts with leading yourself first. You can't lead anybody. And that's where I always start. And then again, teaching those surrounding skills that go with it and making sure that people are open and honest in the fact that this is a process. I tell people when I get on stage, man, I'm not a guru. I'm not going to give you 5 tips to be the world's best leader here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you to engage in your process. hold up a mirror to your strengths and your weaknesses, look your demons in the face and say, here's how we're going to work on these things. That's what I'm asking you to do. If you do that and you give me your trust and you buy into this, you will lead people more efficiently and you will lead yourself more effectively.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Like, and I really can't even expand on it. Like, leading, you can't lead anyone until you can lead yourself.
You're just a
If you,
guy out for a walk.
absolutely. And if you can't effectively lead yourself, no one's going to want to follow you. And of course, you know who John Maxwell is. He is the guru when it comes to leadership. And he breaks it down into five tiers of leadership. And the very first one is leading by position, which is okay to start, but you don't want to live there. That's like a 6 month, you're okay in this area, and then after 6 months, you gotta bounce. Rent is due. And so, and that's far too often. I feel like people just get stuck in leading from position because, like you said, they're not willing to hold that mirror up and look at their self and lead their self. So that just leaves them leading from position because no one's going to follow a person that doesn't have the character, the morals, the drive to lead themselves first.
There's no doubt. And like you were mentioning there with the levels of leadership, I'm huge on that. I tell people all the time, it's okay to start here, but this can't be your go-to. You got to add tools to the toolbox and be able to, you need to give people a reason to follow you other than the C on your jersey or the plaque in front of your office. That can't be the reason. Why do they want to follow you? Why do they want to come in here? If you're running a company, why does somebody want to work that extra 5 hours or 6 hours when they could be watching their kid's soccer game? You better give them a reason. Why do they want to trust you when things are bad and they're getting calls from recruiters to go to other companies and do what you're doing here at a better level? You got to give them a reason to stay, right? You have to. And that starts with character. And then the way that you lead them again, and I think you're definitely going to get to this, and this also we'll take the fast route here. At some point, you got to get in the trenches too. Like I tell leaders, operate in the clouds, but be willing to work in the trenches. Like you cannot ask people to do things that you are not capable or willing to do yourself. You can't. You can't. And then I run my business like that. And again, I know there's, a point as a CEO where you're not going to go out. If you're the CEO of Ford Motors, you're not out there pressing bumpers, right? Well, probably nobody is at this point because of computers and robots and everything else. But you're not out there hand pressing them yourselves. But you damn sure better know what's going on. You better have an
Right.
understanding because you lose. What happens is people get into their leadership roles and they lose perspective and they
Mm-hmm.
don't remember what it's like to be somebody. Like maybe you're seeing things from a different way than your employee because they have different challenges and a different perspective than you. If you put yourself in the trenches and you relate to them a little bit, then you'll be able to see things from their perspective. And maybe you'll be able to better communicate your vision to them and why this is important. Because right now, all they're seeing is how it's impacting their daily life. They're not seeing the process. They're not seeing the overarching theme. So how good are you at communicating that? And you can't communicate that unless you understand both sides.
That's such a good point, and I call it to the big picture. I call those leaders the big picture leaders, right? And the big picture is so important. You're absolutely right. You cannot lose sight of the big picture. But also equally important is that little picture, because just like what you said, that little picture is what your team members see, right? So you have two jobs as a leader. One, you have to be in that little picture and empathize with your team members. And two, you have to be a communicator, communicating the pieces of that big picture that apply to them in their little picture. And they're slowly going to start seeing the broad. And
That's
suddenly things start making sense. And when they start making sense, that's how you get that. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, little Johnny. I got to go to work, and I can only be at half your soccer game today
right.
because daddy's people need them.
But if you don't communicate that, it's never going to happen. And sometimes I think leaders get stuck in two boats. Either they under communicate because they say those people don't need to know that, or they over communicate and now they're burdening their people with things that they don't need to know. There's a fine line. There's a balance. You have to
Mm-hmm.
communicate the vision, but one of the ways to think about it is just remember the hard truth. This is a hot take, but I'm going to say it. The hard truth is this: people don't care what you want. They care why it's good for them. That's it. That's the hard truth, man. your people don't care what you want. They want to know why it's good for them. So your job is, if you're asking somebody to do something challenging and you're asking them to stretch, whether it's resources or skills or personnel, whatever, if you're asking them to stretch, you better communicate why that is vital and crucial to the vision and the mission of the company. And you better be able to back that up and walk what you're talking. It's hard. Why do you think people get so upset when they see cuts in personnel, or they see reductions in force or layoffs, and then you hear the C-suite just got a bonus? Like, that's why people get so frustrated. You have to communicate these things. You have to be open and honest with your people. And there's part of that is just ethics and just being a good human, which at the end of the day, that's what leadership is, right? Be who you needed. Just be a good person. And you're off to a hot start. You'll be in a pretty okay place. But again, yeah, it's communicating that vision often and over and over and over in a million different ways, where the message is still the same, but you're saying it in whatever language that person needs to hear it in, or whatever verbiage that person needs to hear it in. But you have to communicate that stuff, because people don't care what you want. They care about why it's good for them.
You're absolutely right. And then, but I will challenge you a little bit, because I think if you do it right, eventually people do care about what you want, but you have to do it right. And that leads into my next topic then, is that's the culture that you build in your organizations, right? If you build the right culture, and you, like you said, you're giving them the pieces of the big vision that apply to them and matter to them, and you're staying empathetic to the small picture that they're a part of, you're creating this culture that is so inclusive, so powerful, that they want to care about you, because you're so impactful on their life.
Right. Definitely. And culture is the result of leadership, right? It's leadership, culture, habits, results. That's the pathway. And so when you look at it, like when you're creating that culture as a leader, you're telling your people what's important by how you're spending your time and how you're interacting with them and what behaviors you're modeling. Like, whatever behaviors and whatever values you want your company to stand for, you need to act on them consistently and show people that this is what's celebrated, this is what's tolerated, these are the things that are rewarded within our culture, this is how we interact, this is how we communicate, this is how we include people, whatever. You have to do that in order for people to start to understand how they're supposed to act, and what behaviors they're supposed to build, and what habits they're supposed to build, because those habits are what's going to show up in your internal communications. It's what's going to show up in your client facing behaviors. It's what's going to show up in your team meetings. You have to model those behaviors and model those values, because as a leader, you're the one telling people, this is how we act, this is how we behave, these are the things that are important to us. And if you're not doing it, then your culture and that beautiful statement that HR and legal wrote, it means nothing.
That beautiful statement means absolutely. It's not
that you wrote a big check for, that beautiful statement that you paid your legal counsel hours to look over to make sure nobody got offended or upset by. It doesn't mean a thing.
So how can leaders ensure that their culture continues to match the vision then? What tools do leaders use?
Yeah, so I think feedback first and foremost, frequent and fair feedback, both ways. You have to be able to give it and receive it. That's the first thing. I tell people feedback is like whiskey. It's best served straight, and it burns on the way down. All right, that's the way it goes. You have to be able to take your medicine and deal with it as a leader. That's part of it. You have to show your people that you value their opinion. The other thing is you have to make them feel safe. They have to be able to trust you. If they don't trust you, you're not getting anywhere with them. There's no way for you to even try to start to communicate a vision if people don't trust you. And so you have to do those things first. And so focusing on that and getting a feeling of safety, trust, commitment from their leader is going to go a long way in building that trust. Now, the other piece is keeping a heartbeat and keeping a pulse on your culture. Like, a lot of people think culture is just something, okay, well, we have our staff retreat every year. We go to Six Flags and we, hot dogs and whatever. Like, no, man, that's not culture. Culture is a daily endeavor. Culture is every single day keeping a pulse on what is going on in your room, and making sure that your stated culture and your experience culture match up, right? So when I say that, I mean your stated culture is what you say you're about. Okay, so if I'm a football coach and I say we're about family, pride, and trust, right? Those are our words. That's what we're about. And then if I ask the players on my team, what are you experiencing on a daily basis? What words would you use to describe our program? And they don't use the words family and trust, then there's a gap between our stated culture and our experience culture, because what we're saying we're about is not what we're actually about, right? And so that's when that issue starts to happen. So we want to try and close that gap as much as possible. So the way that you do that is reiterating it, and then again making sure that there's a way to define those words, right? So if I'm, just to give an example, if I'm, GM Motors, General Motors, and one of our words is innovation, okay, that's one of our values, that's part of our culture. What am I doing to reward people that innovate? What behaviors am I showing people that say, hey, we value innovation here? What does my research and development budget look like? Like, don't tell me you're a family oriented company if you're not giving maternity leave, if you're cutting costs in certain areas. Like, don't, you know what I mean? It has to line up. The resources have to match the expectation of the culture.
Yeah, and it's funny, David, because my audience is going to be like, this is a broken record. Did your voice get deeper or something? Because you're literally saying everything I say all the freaking time, man. Like, and trust. I talk about trust so much, man. And part of that, I just want to add to what you said is the personal relationship with each one of your team members. You can't have trust with from your team members unless you have personal relationship. And one of the tools I use with my clients is what I call a leader's book, and it comes from the military. And a leader's book is nothing more than you just write down birthdays, anniversaries, important dates, when parents died. Does your mom have cancer? Does your dad have Alzheimer's? When did you get your puppy? When did it die? Things like that. Like important dates I need to remember, important facts about your life. Maybe you have a food allergy, right? And we're doing a team lunch, and I'm like, oh, we can't go here because Susan is allergic to shellfish. Right? How powerful is that when she's like,
It's massive. It's massive. And it shows them that you are invested, and you can't fake that, right? Like, that's what people don't understand. You can't fake relationship. You can try, but people can smell that a mile away. We are, as unevolved as we are, we're also a very evolved species when it comes to detecting threats and detecting nonsense. And so we can smell that stuff a mile away. And that's exactly, when I was coaching, one of the things that I did with every player is the first day I met them, I said, okay, name, where you're from, and tell me 3 things about you that have nothing to do with the sport that you play. I don't care what they are. 3 things, anything you want, right? And I committed those things to memory. I made flashcards of the players with their things on them. And then when they would come in, it'd be like, hey man, did you catch, I know you're a Knicks fan. Did you catch the Knicks game last night? Even though, like, I might have just looked that score up before he came in the room, but it doesn't matter. I knew enough to know, hey, I got Johnny coming in. Johnny's a Knicks fan. Let me look up the Knicks score. Let's have a conversation about this. Those types of things go so far with people. And the other thing is just their names. Like, you would be surprised how many people out there don't call people by their names. Dale Carnegie said it, the sweetest sound in anybody's language is the sound of their own name. Call people by their names and do it consistently and often in your conversations, and go out of your way to build that trust. We in football, we call it KYP, know your personnel. Like, you have to do that groundwork. Otherwise, all the communication tools that I'm sure you teach and I teach, they don't matter. When I do communication in our workshops, I spend the first 15 minutes on ways to get to know your people.
mm-hmm.
And leaders can roll their eyes, and people can roll their eyes and say, well, we don't want to do icebreakers. We don't want to do this. We don't want to do that. Well, guess what? You have to, because you have to find a way to share vulnerability and share experiences. Literally, the formula for trust is shared experience times time. That's literally the mathematical formulation for trust. So how are somebody going to trust you?
Say that one more time.
It's shared experiences times time. Shared experiences over time. That is the definition of trust. How is somebody going to trust you if you're not sharing experiences with them?
I've never heard that mathematical formula before. That's really cool. I
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
it's simple, man. I break trust down like a bank account. Like I say, if I want $5,000 from the ATM and I go to make a withdrawal, I better put $5,000 in there, or I'm going to look real stupid, right? It's the same thing with your people. If you go to hold somebody accountable, or you try and make a hard decision as a leader, and you haven't put deposits in that account, in that trust account, it's going to blink red, and you are going to look dumb, and you don't come back from that. I tell people it's like the 90s, right? When the machine used to eat your card and you don't even get it back. Like, you don't get another shot at it. This isn't, it's
Right.
not just a quick, access denied. It's no, man, your card is ripped up. Now you're at home trying to tape it together or call the ATM machine, or call the ATM company or the bank, right? So no, trust is a bank account, man. You have to make deposits over time. And some of them are naturally occurring, right? There's things that just happen throughout the course of a day that if you're emotionally intelligent enough, you can take advantage of and build trust through them, right? Little things of like shared adversity. Like if you're in the break room and somebody is looking for the coffee and they can't find it, and you're like, oh man, coffee's gone all the time around here. Like that's a little shared adversity that plants a seed in their head. Like, oh, they're normal people. Okay, yeah, I can have this conversation, right? They did a cool experiment with this. So they had people in a supermarket, in a grocery store, and they had a long line, and they had somebody in the line was an actor, and they would turn around and smile at somebody who wasn't an actor in the back of the line. And then they had somebody come into the store and act like they were robbing the store, or they did different scenarios, just some sort of adverse situation in the store. The person that smiled at that person back there, the random person was more likely to help that stranger than anybody else in the store, because it was a shared experience. They shared adversity together. It's the same
Wow.
reason that like plane crash survivors, that's why their families are so close. That's why military support groups work so well. That's why AA works so well, because it's shared adversity. It's a very, very good way to build trust, right? There's that show. I don't know if you've seen it. It's pretty big now. It's literally a guy interviews celebrities and they eat hot wings together. And people are like, how is this guy getting these great interviews from these people? And I'm like, it's very, very simple. It's shared adversity. That person they trust him more than they trust a reporter on a random couch somewhere, because he's going through, they can see him sweating because he's eating the hot wings too. So they're opening up to him. So they're being more vulnerable. Like shared adversity is a huge way to build trust. So is shared success, right? So people, if you're around every time somebody has something successful going on in their life, they're going to start to associate you with that success. And so now they trust you more. Like there's a lot of little tricks and tips and things that you can use that naturally occur in the workplace if you're looking for them. You have to be emotionally intelligent and be aware of what's going on. But a lot of leaders are so in the weeds that we don't take time to take advantage of those situations.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And what's so frustrating to me about that is it doesn't take a massive amount of time. Like everything, it's going to take a lot of time in the beginning because you're learning and you're getting used to it. But give it a month or two, and it's going to become second nature. And those little cues you were talking about, you're suddenly going to see them, and you're not. It's not just going to go in one ear and out the other. When you hear David talking about how his son got MVP of his eighth grade football team, that's a big freaking deal. That needs to be celebrated. So, hey, next team meeting, hey guys, make sure you congratulate David. His son did this amazing thing. And now all of a sudden, it's not even work experience. It's family experience,
Life
right?
experience.
It's life experience. And that's what we want our work to be like. And that's one of the things I harp on so much is we talk about how we're a family, right? Target, big about that. Like, oh, that's a Target family. But what does Target do to reinforce that it's a family? Because coming from personal experience with talking to some of their employees, it's not very much. They don't feel like a member of a family.
Right. I challenge people a lot of times when I hear them say that. Like if a leader of a business tells me they're a family, I say, give me 3 instances. What are 3 things that you do that's family like? Well, we do this. Okay, do you have the hard conversations? Do you argue with each other? Do you have conflict? Right? Do you hug it out at the end? And I don't mean physically hug, but do you do something to reaffirm the relationship at the end after a debate? If you don't have yes to those answers, then you're not a family, man.
Right,
Do you have
absolutely.
people in your group that love each other but don't like each other? Like, you know what I mean? Let's ask the real questions here.
I love that, man. Like, literally, I harp on that all the time too, man. Like I tell people in the military, some of the most amazing people that I love with all my heart, I met in the military. Some of the biggest scumbags I also met in the military. I still love them,
Love
but
them.
I can't freaking stand them. They're scumbags,
It's
but I
exactly
still
it.
love them. You don't have to like someone to love them. Like there, you have. I'm sure you have someone in your immediate family who you don't really like that much because they kind of get on your last freaking nerve, but you still love them because they're your blood. Like,
There's no doubt.
and that is exactly what leaders need to understand is just because you don't like somebody that's not an excuse not to love them. And if you don't
I
love your team, then you shouldn't be a leader.
There you go. I put a third word with that. I tell leaders all the time, don't ever get confused between love, like, and respect. Those three
Yeah.
things are very, very different. Those three things are very, very different. And I say a lot of leaders trip over the fact that they want to be liked. They want their team to like them, right? That puts a ceiling on your relationship because here's the thing. If you just like somebody, you might not be willing to hold them accountable. You might watch them screw up and not say anything. I got a lot of friends that wouldn't say a damn word to me if I went out and had a couple beers on a Tuesday and did something stupid. They wouldn't say
Mm-hmm.
a word to me. They'd be like, dude, it happens. Right. But then I got a group of friends that I love and respect and that love and respect me. And if I did that, they'd be on the phone with me. What the hell are you doing? What
Mm-hmm.
are you doing? They
Mm-hmm.
love me enough to hold me accountable. Right. And they respect me enough to hold me accountable. So, like, love, and respect are three different things. And as a leader, we can't control like. That is based on somebody else's emotional maturity. That has nothing to do with you. They could
Mm-hmm.
just like Chinese food and you're selling pizza. It has nothing to do with you. Right. So don't go after like. You want to go after love and respect because those you can earn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100. And it's funny you say that because my biggest mentor in the military, up until about 3 or 4 years ago, I thought he hated my guts. But I always learned, like he always gave me these little tidbits. And my favorite one to share is that he told me one time, I was like a year into the military. He told me, Morris, you have not wasted a day as long as you've learned at least one new thing that day. You'll never waste a day as long as you do that. But the second you stop learning, you've wasted your life.
Love that. Love that.
And that's always, but I thought that dude hated my guts. He was always so mean to me and so hard on me. And it's like, I was talking to him not too long ago because I needed advice. And I was like, I said something along the lines like, "Hey, I sorry to bug you. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from." And he's like, "Why would you think that?" I'm like, "Well, because Top, you hate me." Like, I don't fucking hate you. Like, why do you think I busted your balls so hard all these years? Because I love it. Like, I'm like, really? So I mean, like, it's just so powerful whenever you differentiate that take away that like part because, like you said, like doesn't matter.
Oh,
All that matters is the love and respect because I got more value from that man than I have most people in my life, with the exception of like my dad and my mom. Like
right.
that dude gave me more value, and up until for 20 years, I thought he hated me.
There was a coach I had, and I don't necessarily all the way agree with this, but there was a coach that I had that used to always say, "Hate me now, love me later." And he
Mm-hmm.
used to always say that. He said, "You might hate me right now, but you will love me down the line." And there were some things that he did that I looked when I became a coach and was like, I won't do it that way. But the premise of the thought process behind what he was saying made a lot of sense to me. Like, because especially think about it as a strength and conditioning coach, right? Like, I got to see these dudes at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm the last person they want to see because I'm
Right?
jacked up. I've been up since 4. You just rolled out of bed. I've been up since 4. I'm fired up, man. The music's already rolling. I'm yelling. I got my whistle. We're going at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm asking you to do things similar to PT in the military, right? I'm
Yeah.
asking you to do things that are physically uncomfortable at a time of day that is not happy for most people. And I'm going to continue to ask that. And I'm going to be unwavering in the standards that I hold you to. Are you going to like me in that moment? Absolutely not. I got a guy that he flipped me the bird more times than I can count. But you know what? He called me from the hospital the night his daughter was born. He called me when he signed his first professional contract. He still FaceTimes me. That dude hated me when he was playing for me, but he loved me because he knew that I cared about him. He knew, and more importantly, he said this. More importantly, he knew that I respected him as a man because he went through what I asked him to go through. He did what he had to do, And so again, it's not, you can't chase like. You can't chase like. You got to chase love and chase respect, because you can earn that through your character and through the way that you command, through the way that you carry yourself, through the way that you communicate, through the way that you show that you care about people. And by going the extra mile and doing exactly what you said, finding out, hey, Joe, how'd your kid's baseball tournament go this weekend? I know you had to take off early on Friday for that. Did everything go okay? How'd the kids do? And then you tell them a story. You say, hey, oh man, I remember when I was playing, or, I remember when my son was playing and we had to go to, XYZ. I remember those travel ball days, man. Like, now you have a shared connection with that person. And now they might know something about you that makes them respect you a little bit more. So you have to do that stuff. You have to.
Absolutely, you're 100% right, and we're running up on time, but the last little piece of advice that I know you're going to agree with is not everything you just said, but another powerful tool, and I would dare say probably close, if not the most powerful tool, is the power of the handwritten note. Right? Gina and her husband are celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary, and you get them a Hallmark, and you handwrite hey, congratulations on 25 years. That's incredible. And it shows in your and how much or how valuable you are to this team, because you bring that same work ethic and pride and everything to the team. Thank you so much, yada yada yada. That handwritten note goes a long way for building the know, like, trust with your team.
There's no doubt. And I think it's a lost art because things have become so easy for us. It's so easy to shoot an email and just say thanks. It's so easy to shoot a text message. Like, I'm so big on sitting down and writing thank you. Like, anytime that we have a client that we go and work with, I sit down and I write them a full letter, handwritten. It's not sent from our business address. It's sent from my home address, with a thank you in there and the whole deal. I sent them a t-shirt, everything right from me. And you would be surprised how many times I've gone to their office after that and seen that note hanging on a pinboard or on a cork board or whatever, a bulletin board. Like, that stuff matters. It matters to people because it shows that you took the time to be a little bit different than everybody else. You could have took the easy way out and you didn't, because the relationship matters. You're showing that person that, hey, you matter enough for me to take time out of my day to sit down and write this note. And so, yeah, I'm a huge proponent of handwritten letters, handwritten notes. I think it goes a long way. I do it a lot in business, just connecting with people. If somebody takes the time out of their day to answer a question for me or chop it up on a podcast or whatever, like, I'm probably going to write that person a thank you note at some point. It might not be right away, but they're going to get a note at some point. That stuff to me is crucial, man. It's the lost art of being a human and just being a good person.
Right. Absolutely. And I agree with you 100%. I absolutely despise email. Unfortunately, it's part of business now and we have to live by it. But I'll never forget the first time, because this never happened in the military. In the military, you would get a phone call and be told to go stand on the carpet in front of Sergeant Major's desk or in front of the colonel's desk. And that meant you were in some serious trouble. But in the corporate world, it doesn't quite work that way. You'll get an email just chewing you out. And it's like, I've never been more offended in my life than when I got that hateful email. And it's like, who
does this?
Yeah, like, it made me so mad, man. I was so indignant.
But here's a question for you. Further than that, why do we as a society send, there's a little phrase that we send via text and via email in business settings and in personal settings that has a 0% rate of getting the desired result that we want? You know what it is? There's one phrase that we send in an email and a text. There's never been a time in history where it has gotten the result that you wanted when you sent it. Yet we still do it.
ASAP.
We need to talk. We need to talk. What's your gut reaction? And see, like, I can see it on your face right now. I say that in front of rooms of people and they're like, oh, oh yeah, I hate that. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
now raise your hand if you've gotten a we need to talk text or email. Everybody raises their hand. All right, raise your hand if you ever sent a we need to talk email or text. Everybody raises their hand. And I always say, why? Why do you do it? Why do you do that to somebody? Because you know what the outcome is going to be,
Yeah.
right? If you're trying to deliver feedback, so say you are trying to give a hard conversation to someone, you're trying to have critical feedback. The whole point of critical feedback is the feedback piece, which means you want them in a state of mind to be able to hear what you're trying to say to them. By sending them an email that says, we need to talk, followed by a meeting invite, you just ensured that when they walk in the room, they are not going to be in the state of mind to hear anything, because all they did for however long it was between that email and the meeting is thought about why they don't like this job, why they don't like you, why they should probably quit, all the things you've done wrong to them in the past. They already know how they feel coming into that. They're already emotionally charged. It's the worst thing. We need to eliminate it from corporate America and from America in general. There should be a warning that pops up on computers and cell phones when you type "we need to talk." It should be like those old apps people used to make when they said like it stops you from drunk texting. It needs to be like that. Like if you go to send "we need to talk," your phone or your computer needs to be like, "Dude, are you for real? Like you're really going to do this right now?" And rethink it, man. It drives me nuts. Drives me wild.
You hit the man. I can't believe I've never actually thought of that before. But you're absolutely right, because it instantly puts you on the defensive. Like you're
100% every
instantly
time.
defensive every single time, because and a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but some of the times it might not even be anything bad. It's just, yeah, let's talk about your vacation you got coming up because we need to adjust it a little bit. Like,
And
but
that's where leaders go wrong. We don't think about how somebody that we're sending it to will
mm-hmm,
receive it, right? Because there is that natural power dynamic and that power distance between us and our team. No matter what,
mm-hmm,
it's just the nature of being a leader. So when I send somebody, I do it, I still do it sometimes, where I'll text somebody on my team and be like, yo, give me a ring. And to me, it's not a bad thing. Like I want to talk about something. But to them, they'll call me and be like, yo, what's wrong? And I'm like, what do you mean, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong.
mm-hmm.
They're like, you text me and said, give me a ring. I'm like, oh man, okay, yeah, you took that. The perception was, got it.
Right.
I understand, my fault. You know what I mean? But it happens to us as leaders. We do that, right? Where like exactly what you said. It might just be, hey, let's talk about getting you coverage for the time that you're on vacation. But because all
Right.
you said, because you were walking out of a meeting, so you just quick typed, hey, swing by my office. That person got that email and was like, oh my God.
But what have I done?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said you said another one of my trigger words, and that's perception. One of the things I hate more than anything in the world is when people say, "Well, perception's reality." I hate it. I hate it. Leaders should never ever say that, because I can probably count on one hand the number of times in my professional career that perception was actually the reality.
Whose perception? That's the question you got to ask. Whose perception?
Right,
Because
exactly.
it's just like they say about like they say about arguments or fights, right? There's your side, my side, and the truth, right? And the
Right.
same thing is true about perception. There's your perception, my perception. Everybody has a different perception that's shaped by their experiences and their influences, environment, and things like that. Like, no, I agree with you on that. I think it's a cop out. It's a cop out, and it's an excuse.
Absolutely. And I tell leaders all the time, like if that's something you say from now on, every time you say it, someone gets to slap you across the face because you deserve it, because it's BS. You should never say that. But anyway, David, I appreciate so much this conversation. We're actually over time, but that's okay because this was such a good conversation. I had so much fun. And it's so amazing to hear someone else say the things I say all the time back to me, because it just like reaffirms, like, okay, I'm not an idiot. Okay, this makes sense. But I
No,
really
man.
appreciate it, man. So tell my people, tell my listeners how they can get a hold of you, how they can get you out at their speaking engagements, or how they can get hire your services if they want them.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So we're on the web, obviously, edgeleadershipacademy.com. And then my dog's going nuts right now, so I apologize for that. But yeah,
It's
we're on the web, edgeleadershipacademy.com. We have a booking form there. I'm on every social media at Coach D Kitch. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever, it's all the same. It's all at Coach D Kitch. And yeah, we're always looking to connect with people. If there's anybody out there that's interested in having us come in and talk to your team or talk to your organization or work with people one-on-one, if there's leaders out there or people out there that are looking for coaching, mentoring, we do that as well. So always looking forward to connecting with people, man. And I had a great time doing this. So keep doing what you're doing, brother. This is a great message that a lot of people need to hear. So I appreciate you. And I thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Likewise. And of course, I will have the links to all of David's stuff in the show notes and in the bios, and whatever platform you're on is down there. So make sure you scroll down and click over to him, give him plenty of like and love. And while you're at it, once you're done with David, head over to renownedleadership.com and give me some love as well. And of course, David, everyone that is a guest on my show, they get hit with the final piece of wisdom. So tell us your best piece of advice, how people can lead like a champion.
I think I said it before, but I'm going to say it again. Be who you needed. Be the father, be the brother, be the mentor, be the coworker, be the boss. Be who you needed. And if as long as you rely on that, remember that no matter what industry you're in the people game. You're in the people business. So if you be who you needed and act accordingly, you'll be all right.
Absolutely. That is great advice. I love that. So again, he is David Kitchen. Thank you so much again, David. It has been an honor and pleasure. I'm definitely going to have you back later, just because it's nice to have someone that agrees with you, because so many people disagree. It becomes tiresome. But anyway, I digress. Thank you everybody so much for joining me this week on the Renowned Leadership Podcast. And I will see you next week. And in the meantime, don't forget, lead like a champion. Goodbye, everybody.
How I try to sleep, but you're deep in my mind. Got a hold of me. When I'm awake, I'm all blind.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Renowned Leadership Podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to David as much as I enjoyed talking to him. It was a blast from before we started recording, during recording, after recording. Had so much fun. I'm so glad I got to be a part of this and take advantage of this amazing opportunity to get to talk to David. So much fun. I highly, highly, highly recommend you guys scroll down to the bottom of the show notes or the description or the bio and click his links. Go check him out. Give him tons and tons of love. He definitely deserves it. He's an amazing dude. Once you're done doing that, head over to renownedleadership.com, top right-hand corner, book a call. Come talk to me. Come check out the brand new Renowned Leadership Coaching Program. The system is amazing. You guys are going to love it. I know it. That's going to wrap it up for this week, guys, and I will see you all next week. In the meantime, never forget, lead like a champion. Goodbye, everybody.